Hello everyone, my name is Kaznagul and I'm going to present you my master thesis project, which is called Caregiving Burden Among Family Members, Informal Caregivers of Cancer Patients in Nur-Sultan City, Kazakhstan, a qualitative research study. When a person develops cancer, it's family members who provide the context for this experience, but they themselves are often profoundly affected by the disease. There is a growing body of evidence which suggests that stressors include lack of awareness or knowledge, financial constraints, stigma of accepting help, family resistance, depletion of existing services, and incongruent goals between the healthcare providers and the patients. Importantly, however, most of the studies originate from Western countries. In Kazakhstan, a post-Soviet state, accessing quality services and effective interventions for caregivers of cancer patients is challenging due to the shortage of support services and lack of research in this area. So to better facilitate adequate and effective interventions in Kazakhstan, it is crucial to unravel caregivers' stress and burden experiences of caring for cancer patients. And this is the objective of my project. There is a growing recognition that informal caregivers of chronically ill patients are themselves in need of care. Previous literature shows that caregivers of patients with cancer may encounter a lot of issues such as anger, despair, loneliness, fear, anxiety, burden, and depression. These are all psychological issues. Additionally, research shows that family caregivers develop physical problems. For example, changes in appetite, burnout, headaches, chronic fatigue, weight gain or loss, weakness resulting in a low quality of life. Also, research clearly indicates that the caregiver's quality of life is very likely to be impacted by their care providing activity, in addition to the fear of losing close and beloved ones. In Kazakhstan, care of patients is usually given by family members, and this is considered as a domestic responsibility. So becoming a caregiver cannot be chosen or planned. Consequently, adaptation and adjustment to the situation happens after the situation develops. On the other hand, studies have shown that caregiving can lead to numerous positive experiences. For instance, increased feeling of love, feeling of closeness, discovering significance through the caregiving experience, self-improvement, religious and spiritual development, getting social help from others, confidence and individual fulfillment. Family members who give home care to cancer patients leave their own health and needs on one side and attempt to keep all their energy and vitality in the care of patients. So most of the caregivers' own needs are ignored. Taking into account its physical and psychological burden, as well as the impact of care for cancer patients on family, work, and social life, it gets important to assess the quality of life of caregivers. So knowing the experience and needs of caregivers is essential to recognize the group at risk for difficulty, to develop support groups according to these characteristics, to decide the assets and the planning of the service to be taken, to build up the services to be provided by the health institutions, and to establish the health policies and systems. As stated previously, even though there are many studies on caregiving burden among caregivers of patients with cancer or any other severe disease, there are no previous studies on the caregiving burden and support for caregivers conducted in Kazakhstan. So this study was designed, therefore, to fill this gap and to investigate what burdens caregivers of cancer patients carry due to their caregiving responsibilities, what kind of physical and psychological health problems they experience, and what kind of social support caregivers perceive. In addition, the study examines the caregivers' perceptions regarding the availability and quality of life, quality of care for cancer patients in Nur-Sultan City. The findings from this study could potentially help in implementation of social and mental support for caregivers and improve their quality of life. So the objectives of the study, first is to determine what burdens caregivers of cancer patients carry due to their caregiving responsibilities, and what kind of physical and psychological health problems they experience in Nur-Sultan. Next is to define what kind of social support caregivers perceive in Nur-Sultan. Third, to understand caregivers' needs in Nur-Sultan city. And next, to examine perceptions regarding healthcare and patient management for cancer patients in Kazakhstan. Methods. So the study design is a qualitative research study method was used. The semi-structured in-depth interviews were conducted and two different methods of recruitment were used, starting with purposeful sampling to recruit informal caregivers such as relative, partner, or friend of a person diagnosed with cancer. This was done with the help of psychologists and social workers of Republic and local city oncological center. And the next snowballing procedure was used. The researcher asked the participant if he or she knows of anyone in similar position and would they like to participate. Study population, family caregivers of cancer patients in the Sultan city were participating in the interview and data were collected from them. Inclusion criteria for participation were being unpaid informal caregiver. The exclusion criteria is being paid or employed caregiver, and second one is being less than 18 years old, and lastly, person's unwillingness to be interviewed. Next, data analysis. So audio taped interviews were transcribed and translated from Russian and Kazakh languages to English and formatted into a common format and printed. The framework approach was employed, which is based on thematic analysis. It aims to develop meaningful themes which represent the participants' accounts. And the study was approved by Institutional Research Ethics Committee of Nazarbayev University. So let's move to the results. Descriptive. So semi-structured interviews using an interview guide were conducted with 9 caregivers of cancer patients in Nur-Sultan city. 2 of them were male and 7 were female respondents. The sample size was determined through the achieving saturation based on common redundant responses between interviewees. All participants of the study were Kazakhs, however, only 2 of them responded in Kazakh language, others used mainly Russian or mixed 2 languages. The age of the participants ranged from 20 to 65 years old. 4 interviewees are taking care of family members with thyroid cancer. 2 of them are the caregivers of the lung cancer patients. 1 is looking after the person with liver cancer. 1 is taking care of stomach and pancreatic cancer patients, and the last one has lost a relative with stomach cancer. After the analysis of the transcribed interviews, 4 main themes were identified. The main themes included caregiving burden, with sub-themes of physical and psychological emotional burden. Next is support, third, healthcare and patient management. And the last theme is the caregiver's needs with sub-themes of social groups and financial support. So let me begin with the caregiving burden theme and with physical burden sub-theme. It was found that almost all cancer patients are functionally dependent on family members who changed their roles from parent, spouse, sister, brother, daughter, or son to a caregiver, so that the caregiver's quality of life is compromised as a consequence of their role. So here are the answers of the respondents. Let me read. I give medications, check the dosage, put in the injections. I cook only what he wants to eat, and if he doesn't want to, he will not even taste the food. Then the next one. I was always there, always helping, supporting, doing everything myself. I cleaned the house, cooked, looked after the children, and brought everything she needed to the hospital. All this duty was on my shoulders. The next sub-theme is psychological emotional burden. Uh, so respondents did not explicitly express their emotional problems, rather they addressed their emotions and feelings with stoicism and positivity. For example, one respondent said, in the first days, it was very hard for both of us. We cried at night, worried. Then I pushed myself. I decided to think positively and began to scold my husband as well. We are given a chance. Let's try. Mm, Furthermore, a few caregivers accepted the fact of having a family member with cancer and that it is an unavoidable situation, so that they decided not to lose heart, take measures and action. For instance, they said, then I realized that I cannot avoid this and began to motivate myself. I told myself that all this difficult moment would be left behind. I could handle it. In addition, caregivers consistently spoke of a belief in God and how religiousness and spirituality is essential to their caregiving experience. Um, for example, here is the answer of one respondent. No matter what happens, a person can overcome everything. Allah has rewarded us with strength and will, courage and aspiration. Here we must not lose this and fight with everything. Everything is in the hands of man, and we need to think positively. Interestingly, several participants spoke in the effort to provide the best care possible. Caregivers usually neglect their own well-being. For example, one participant said, I had never taken care of my health before. I sometimes drink herbal tea and take dietary supplements. I always helped people work. I did not pay much attention to my health, and it turned out that I had a sore in my stomach. Also, they mentioned about suppressing their own despair and anxiety. For example, here is one answer. Naturally, there was fear, but this does not help. The movement began immediately. The desire for care has appeared necessarily. I quickly adapted as I began to act abruptly and had no time to sit and worry. Fear was suppressed by the responsibility to take action immediately. Also, caregivers' own needs are frequently considered secondary or are overlooked to those of the patients they are caring of. Mm, I know that, for example, let me read one answer. I know that I need to take care of myself. I try not to forget about myself. But all the same, since I am a mother, a Kazakh woman, the most important thing for me is my child's health. I often forget about myself. I forget about my sleep regimen and nutrition. I didn't eat or sleep for several days. I don't want to sleep at all. It seems my body is already used to not sleeping. So let's move to the next theme, which is support. Social support is very essential to caregivers since it helps to increase their chances of having an effective and healthy caregiving experience over the long haul. So caregivers complained about the total absence of the social of support from the state in our country, but all expressed their need for financial support from the state. For example, they said there was no financial support. Mom was given a second degree disability, although it was possible for the first. There was no support. In Kazakhstan, there is no support for guardians. On the other hand, caregivers and cancer patients reported receiving social and mental support from doctors, family members, and friends. Here are the examples. Um, Answer examples. Grandparents helped us financially and emotionally. Our doctors always supported and motivated my mom, prescribed good medication. Dad's friends gave money as much as they could. Mom's friends helped with medication. My boss financially supports me. She's always ready, even happy to help me. The next theme is healthcare and patient management. According to the responses of the interview participants, healthcare and patient management is not well developed in Kazakhstan and has so many issues. Initial misdiagnosis and delay in diagnosis are experienced as stressful and burdensome by caregivers and cancer patients. For example, one respondent said, for so long they could not correctly diagnose and we spent so much time and energy because of this. They could just say that they don't know, we would go to another place. Otherwise, we wouldn't suffer so much. The next respondents also reported about being failed by the system and experiencing negativity and fatalism from local doctors. For example, doctors did not particularly monitor the patient's condition. Each time I reminded them to do the bandaging, to bring clean bed sheets, and so on. And last but not least, the financial burden is great, since expenses are not provided for by the health system. So here are the answers of the respondents. Medicine is not developed in Kazakhstan because the state does not allocate money for equipment. Next, there is a quota, but it takes a very long time to get it. And the last, Kazakhstan does not give such support as I can take it from Turkey. Next theme is caregivers needs financial support. The majority of caregivers claim financial support from the state and for the free health examinations and consultations with specialists. For example, here is one answer. First of all, material assistance is very important, as all these problems are mainly due to lack of money. At least they could do tests or MRI, CT scans for free. They are so expensive. Many cannot afford to just go through the examination. A lot of people, especially from villages, cannot come for examination due to the lack of funds. Next, in addition, most respondents wish to join some social networks for caregivers to talk and to share experience and do other activities to distract them from their daily caregiving routine. So here's the one example answer. It would be really nice if there were some organizations or clubs of caregivers where they can share their experience of caregiving, motivate each other, have some leisure time, and do some interesting activities together. In my opinion, these kinds of groups can really help people to overcome their stress and illnesses. Okay, so let's move to the discussion part. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first qualitative study conducted on caregiving burden among family caregivers of cancer patients in Kazakhstan. Firstly, the study revealed that caregiver quality of life was compromised due to the physical burden. And this may be due to the high level of caregiving responsibilities, the change in roles, or shortage of time. In different studies, informal caregivers did not have the opportunity and energy to meet their own needs, and this infuriated their difficulties and burdens. Next, respondents did not particularly express their emotional and psychological problems they faced while taking care of their close ones. According to the respondents' answers, most family caregivers are reluctant to show feelings and neglect their own health and needs. Most caregivers only wish their significant one to get treated from cancer, so they just neglected their own health. This may happen due to some cultural aspects of Kazakh caregivers, according to Saltayev. Especially parents, when they're absolutely ready to do everything for their children's well-being by sacrificing their own health and ignoring their own needs. Uh, caregiving next, caregiving increased caregivers' positive, tender feelings, compassion for their significant others. Uh, so similarly, in previous study, positive coping strategies of caregivers are important for predictors of well-being. It was stated that these positive coping strategies are very important. Next, Islam is biggest religion practiced in Kazakhstan. Approximately 70% of the country's population are Muslims. So in some prior studies, religiousness played a critical role and was deeply embedded within participant caregivers' experience. In this study as well, caregivers consistently highlighted strong belief in God as essential to their caregiving experiences. Respondents commonly reported that God was in control of everything and cancer as well. Consequently, religiousness and spirituality helps them to be in comfort and calmness, since they believe God will not give them more than they can handle. Even some atheists become religious in order to be calm, accept the situation, and help their sick family members to cope with cancer by praying. As was reported by the participants of the study, there are no family caregiver support programs available in Kazakhstan. However, all the participants stated their needs for emotional, physical, and financial caregiver support from healthcare services. According to the National Institute of Health, there are many support groups and organizations for caregivers of cancer patients worldwide. Those groups help to gain new insights and ideas of how to cope, deal with loneliness, share experiences and feelings. Even though there is a total absence of caregiver support programs available in Kazakhstan, people can get a lot of informal social support from their family, relatives, friends, and doctors. Previous studies also reported that perceived social support from friends and someone special has a decreasing effect on caregiving burden. This study shows that delay in diagnosis and misdiagnosis is commonly observed in Kazakhstan. According to the Mohammed Al-Azri's paper, patient fails to recognize and follow up on suspicious cancer symptoms. And some of the participants complained about the negativity and fatalism from local medical workers. However, it is acceptable that interactions between patients and medical practitioners can sometimes be challenging, same as between any other people. So according to Hardavella and his team's paper, these challenging interactions may emerge because of disparities in expectation, perception, and or communication between the patient and doctor, and could be caused by the medical worker, by the patient, or by both. So let me talk about the strengths and weaknesses of my project. This is the first study on caregiving burden among family caregivers of cancer patients in Nur-Sultan and general in Kazakhstan. A qualitative research design is an excellent way to collect very comprehensive and detailed information, those to address the objectives of the study. There are also several limitations of the study. First of all, this thesis research project was a time-sensitive academic exercise. The data collection was for the research began in November 2019 and finished in December 2019. So the sampling limitations were especially because of those time constraints. Also, there is a limited potential pool of participants in Nur-Sultan City. Biases in qualitative work are unavoidable. So in order to address potential bias, I have taken the following actions. First, I strived for transparency by making explicit the assumptions and framework guiding my analysis. Second, demonstrated what kind of conclusions I drew from the interviews by providing quotes. Third, I asked my supervisors to independently check my analysis. Next, I kept a reflexive journal in which I documented my thinking and findings that I had were directly relatable across my analytic framework to the data. So the present study introduced the first qualitative research on caregiving burden among informal caregivers of cancer patients in Kazakhstan. The findings revealed caregiving challenges experienced by family caregivers of cancer patients in Nur-Sultan city. They are changing social and spiritual lives. It also underlined caregivers' social and financial support needs from the state. It is clear that policymakers should look towards those support needs of informal caregivers. And also, the further research studies are needed to clarify the findings and add more information about the caregiving burden among family caregivers and cancer patients in Kazakhstan. Thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.